Hey, real quick before we get this video started, I'm going to be doing a live stream. My final live stream before LA is going to be 2 hours after this video goes up, so it should start around 8 a.m. PST or 11 a.m. EST. Should be mostly Sakazuki testing, just some final thoughts, just going one more stream before the event, and then I will be at LA as well, so if you guys are also going to be there, be on the lookout. I'd love to say hi and give out some dice and everything else, but should be a good event. You guys don't want to miss the live streams, always a good time. Do support everyone who's been supporting those as well, and I hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey everyone, Ekman here with another video, and with the first OPO5 regional here in North America happening this weekend, I wanted to ask and answer the question, will Sakazuki be tier 0 in OPO5? And my answer is, it depends. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all next time.
Damn it.
But seriously, I've seen a lot of people kind of talk about this and just have opinions on Sakazuki and just kind of what this meta looks like that we're going into in general. So I want to just have an opinion piece based off of it. And here's my boiler piece of this is me just reflecting data and it's my own opinion. This is not a call to action or complaining about meta. I'm just giving my own opinion on this kind of stuff and maybe my expectations and my thoughts, again, just going into OPO5 and the meta in general. So also just too long didn't watch. Sakazuki's probably best deck in format. I think that's going to be pretty clear. We're going to see if that's true, but that's my opinion. It's mildly held back by the skill cap. It is a deck that doesn't autopilot. There's a lot of ways for you to cause blunders and make mistakes, so that's something that can hold the deck back for some people, and we don't and we won't essentially have a lot of OPO5 data for the English meta with kind of how the holiday season works, and this is the only weekend for OPO5 regionals before finals, which is in like a month. So we have like this set that just came out, but we don't have events for most of the set, and then we're going to go to OPO6 afterwards. So that's kind of something that affects maybe some of this data, is that we're just not going to have as much about it, which means that again, without the data, I don't have as much confidence to willy-nilly say something should be banned or something should be affected in that kind of way. So and I can't make a video like this without talking about red, and I just kind of want to mention, and kind of a little bit of that last point that I made, is that the reason I started making this series, right, is that we had red being very good for not just a little bit, but what set 2 came out in March 10th, and July 20th, we are seeing red doing pretty much the same thing. The deck's looking very similar, and we are already like almost a month into a new set, and it looked like nothing had really changed. So that's kind of why I made my original video, and then I've been cursed that I made a ban list like the day afterwards, and so people think I manipulate the meta, which I don't. But that is why I kind of made that video, because I had 4 months of data of being like, the meta is pretty much the same, and the meta that we had was kind of stale towards the end of it, and nothing seemed to be changing. So that's why I made that video, and that is also why, like, for this, we have a brand new meta, I think, in a lot of ways, and I think Sakazuki is going to be very strong, but I don't know when to interfere or when will we get enough data to make some confident claims on that. So that's kind of the idea for it. But we do have the Asia meta, and this is some data presented by Noah. If you guys want to check them out, they have a lot of data for some the Asian tournaments, the Asian scene. They have a YouTube and Twitter, so make sure to check those out. But based off 6 of their large events in Asia, their championship series, they had 5 Sakazukis win out of 6 of them, with 1 Katakuri being the other one. And based off all the top 16s and the 1 top 6 for Thailand, this is kind of how the leader breakdown went for those topping placements, with Sakazuki taking just around 40% in there. So that's kind of the idea here. And I just want to kind of mention too is that Sakazuki, like at the beginning, didn't get a lot. Like the first tournament didn't show up very well, right? And then it kind of exploded after that. I mean, I got 3 in Thailand, but again, that was half the top 6. I'm not sure why they did 6. But then like a 7, 6, 8, 9, right? So like, first couple weeks, people didn't know what the build of Sakazuki was or what the techs you want to do, and then once it was figured out, it was good sailing for the rest of the meta, right? And the difference between Asia and us is that Asia had the fresh, couple weeks to figure out what the deck should probably look like. Meanwhile, day 0, like months ago, I knew what Sakazuki probably looked like or should look like, And with this event, you're going to know, you see a lot of people with some very optimized deck lists compared to in Asia, where it was kind of still figuring out what were the good ratios for that kind of stuff. So that's kind of, again, like the difference I want to show between the two of them. But yeah, Sakazuki did very well. Purple Luffy doing the next, and then a good myriad of stuff after that with Enel and I'd say Katakuri. The two of these, they're very similar in a lot of ways, and I think that they are comparable to kind of show off the rest of it, and then some red stuff and just everything else. So that's kind of what we have the data wise for Asia. And also for the first time in a long time, we have the exact same card pool as Asia during when they had this meta. So that's also another kind of, maybe, I don't know if nail in the coffin, but just another pointer that our meta is probably going to look pretty similar to this if our players are doing the same things that they're doing in Asia, kind of thing. And I do also want to point out, just in comparison, for the end of the 4.0 meta, this was, Red won 5 of the 6 events of the last 6. This, I also did not look at this data. This is from one of my previous videos. It's just weird how this kind of lines up for that. And then Whitebeard specifically, which I would say was the best red deck in that format, at least from a consistency standpoint and topping standpoint, got 37 of the 96 spots for this, which is just under 40%. So really similar kind of number wise for showing that, which means that if you think Newgate was really strong and maybe overtuned, you'll probably think Sakazuki is based on numbers. And then if you didn't think Newgate's strong, then you probably don't think Sakazuki's strong based on the numbers either. But I just a quick comparison to what our previous meta was, and then November was just its own different thing for us here. But there it is. But for itself though, and kind of my thoughts, is the leader itself what makes the deck super good. And in general, I don't think so. I think it is a very strong leader. I think both effects are maybe a little overtuned. And the biggest thing is that neither of them have any Dawn requirement for them. I think the when attacking is a requirement, which means that the timing is a little bit rough sometimes, because if you want to get rid of a blocker, but you're one off, you have to attack with their leader first, and they can just block if they have that foresight. You can get the removal for it, but in general, it's very surprising that neither of these not only don't cost Dawn, but not even need Dawn attached to them, which is a little bit wild. It does mean you do get more flexibility in what you get to do. You can do stuff on curve and still get your leader effect, which is very strong for a leader like this. And also the activate main, it's just very good. It's very, very kind of flexible. And I put these kind of other multicolor leaders here on the side because generically, I would say that multicolor leaders are underrepresented in this card game, because having 4 life is such a big setback that the leader has to be broken in itself and have some defensive capabilities to kind of mitigate the fact that you only have the 4 life. So for example, I'd say the 2 most successful multicolor leaders in the card game so far are Trafalgar Law and Don Quixote do Flamingo from OPO4. And mostly because both these decks, for Trafalgar Law specifically, you get card draw with it, essentially, so you get that value back for what you do, and you're able to kind of cheat out costs, which makes it so strong. And then Don Quixote do Flamingo, you get to that 2 Dawn extra open, just means you get a lot of defense power because of that, and a lot of interaction on your opponent's turn, which is kind of difficult to deal with. So that's kind of the difference between how these guys are. But I also would say that these guys are a bit carried with their card pool, right? These effects are good, but without the card pool to support them, they're not generically very good, right? Meanwhile, we see Garp and Sanji, I'd say these are pretty generic effects. Maybe not Sanji, I know it's an analog for Dofi, but Garp has generically probably one of the strongest removal effects in the entire game. Being able to just for free give all this Dawn minus the cards, very, very strong, but it's not doing well, and mostly because even with a good card pool, it doesn't have the cards to support this play style, and it just kind of exists in itself, right? So without the cards to kind of capitalize with these good leader effects, because Trafalgar Law has their 5-drop bounce law, and 10-drop Dofi has itself, and a couple other good support cards in the archetypes, and I guess the film archetype in general, they're able to kind of succeed with also being very, I'd say maybe overtuned a little bit. And meanwhile, again, Garp itself just doesn't see play because there aren't cards and generically to help support what this guy likes to do. So that's kind of the difference. So I think Sakazuki is overtuned, but if I'm being honest, I think these 3 cards over here are probably what's making Sakazuki go from great to very great in a lot of ways. Mostly Rebecca and Rob Lucci, but I do want to kind of talk about Hound Blaze in a little bit. But These are some very, very strong cards, and both of these cards, I think Black in general gets a lot of benefits from both of these, but these are more the culprits itself than I think the leader of Sakazuki in its own way. So first, Rebecca, you guys probably have your own opinion on this. There is no cost for its on-play effect besides just playing the card, which is just no cost, which is bonkers because it says draw one. It says return up to one black character other than Rebecca with cost from 3 to 7 from your trash to your hand. But that's such a big range, and there's so many good cards in that range, like this one. And I don't know. I'm changing my tone, I know, very quickly, so you guys probably know where my mind's at on these opinions. This card's just they wanted this card to be good, and it's very, very good. It draws from trash, which means it's better than drawing a card because it can find the card that you were missing, specifically for whatever scenario you want, which can be like a 3 cost that you can draw from there and play. There's no archetype restriction for this card, which maybe it probably needed to. And then it has counter and it's a blocker, which red being okay in this meta means that it being a 0 cost blocker is not too terrible because not a lot, like most of the removal outside of red is based off cost, which this card has a high cost. So that's kind of the idea. You probably have your opinions on this card, but this one I think needs to either have restrictions, meaning that you have to have X amount of cards in your trash for it to go off. You only get Dressrosa cards, or only if you're in a Dressrosa leader. I think they probably tinkered with all of those, and you're like, nah, we'll just let it be generic. We'll see what happens. And what happens is that the fact that it has blocker too means that like Sakazuki will be at 0 life and be like not afraid of losing for a long time because you have this Rebecca that either helps clear additional attackers on your opponent's board or can find a blocker and then play the blocker outside of its on play effect. You can't play like because it's in rest. Like that's like the cost of playing the card rested is like the only cost for it, but like that's not even that bad against a lot of things because it can just draw you like a 2k counter and then be a 4 cost blocker, which is very good. So I think this card is probably like of the 3, it's probably the strongest, and I think it's the one that needs to be effective if anything, but definitely very, very overtuned. Lucci itself, this card is very strong, and I don't deny that. It is low cost for its effect. Placing 3 cards at the bottom of your deck is not super expensive, and Sakazuki, it's not even a cost because you get to use your activate main effect every turn, including you going first, which means that you get to put 2 cards into your trash by turn 2. And if you saw brand new, boom, all right, you already paid the cost for this. Super easy. So I think that's something that maybe this should have been 5 instead of 3. I think 3 is like a low number for how strong this card can be at times. But again, it's only something that I think Sakazuki can enable easily for 3 comparatively. So that's kind of the difference. And then it's not archetype restricted, which is probably okay, but it is kind of a factor for this card. But it can go 2 for 1. Like even like Fire Fist, which was like the good 2 for 1 card, was still technically a 2 for 2 because you had to discard for something. The cost for this card is not really a cost, which is the big issue. And then it being a 4 cost 6k is already great. It means that your opponent has to like put Dawn onto something to try to get out of it, and then after you play it, you get to attack. Very nice. So I think this could have been a 4 cost 5k with or without a 1k counter to it, but a 4/6 I'd say is like aggressively good stats for this card on top of just the good effect on it. So I think this is maybe a little bit overtuned, but I think like Black probably needed an overtuned card like this to help see some more play. But this one I'm fringe on if anything needs to happen to it. Probably not. I think it's fine in its vacuum, but it is very, very strong. Again, I think Rebecca is still like the more toxic card. And then lastly, Hound Blaze. This is kind of like a weird spot, but I like the idea for it. It's broken, but only in blue and black leaders, which is like Rebecca and Sakazuki at this point, right? Which we'll get more in a little bit. But on the surface, like it gets rid of a 2 or less to the bottom of the owner's deck, which is better removal. But if you look at most blue decks outside of blue-black decks, you don't get any kind of cost reduction. So the effect is pretty weak. But since it only is 2 or less verbatim, but when you're able to put cost reduction on this thing, especially in Sakazuki, this is like 3 or less if you need it to for free. That's great. But then also it has the line that you give something plus 3k, which means that even if you are playing it in straight up blue, you don't even like lose value if you're like trying to go for game with it. So it's just, I think this card is like overstat. It's only a problem in Sakazuki. So I do think that it's okay for like specific leaders or specific like color combinations to have the broken card. But this is definitely the one for blue and black, 100%. And you can kind of compare it to Meteor Volcano, which only KOs up to one of your opponent's character at the cost of 1 or less. So like, look at like the disparity. Like they're both Navy cards, brand new. Can find both of these, but like say, all right, do I want to pay 2 to get rid of a 1 cost, or pay 2, get more attack power than paying this using 2 Dawn naturally, and then also get rid of a 2 or less, which can be a 5 or less, 6 or less very easily in these decks. So just a big change between the two of these. Like this is just like the big, and that's the only thing. If this was in black, like I don't think this card could exist. If it's in blue, it's fine, but it's still very good. And then also the 200 million volts, which is popular in Sky Island and just yellow. It's kind of like the same idea, but it has like this, I would say, almost crippling cost at times, so you have to have 1 or less cards in life, which is sometimes hard to regulate, and your opponent can, recognize that if they leave you at 2, you can't use this effect. But it's kind of like the removal for this is way worse in a lot of ways, right? Like it's just strictly worse. And like even like this can get rid of a Borsalino, but this can also get rid of a Borsalino because of bottom decks instead of KOs. So because bottom decking is like the best removal in the game right now too. So I don't know. I think Hound Blaze. Whenever I get hit by this, I roll my eyes. I'm like, man, this is such a good card. I got outskilled, but this is an opinion video. I can talk about it. And then what counters Sakazuki? This is probably the most opinionated part of this video. You guys could probably have your own secret tech for it, and I'm not asking you to spoil it in the comments, but generally the idea, I think that yellow can still kind of get there and get like the advantage there. I think like Katakuri can just win any matchup if their life is good enough, right? That's kind of just how the deck works. Anel kind of the same way. I'd say like Anel is more like straightforward, and maybe not like as RNG, but more consistent. So kind of like the duality of those. But I think yellow has a good chance against Sakazuki most of the time. And ironically, I think Ace has a really great time against the deck too, because you have a lot of counter removal. You can get rid of the Rebecca's incredibly easy, and you get those kind of those differences for it. Pretty much any like red rush deck is kind of the way to get rid of I feel like have a chance against Sakazuki, because if you're able to press enough pressure, and like the fact that your rush cards already get the value, because like the worst thing is that like you play a 4 cost and your opponent's like, cool, well, I'm going to play my own 4 cost that on play gets rid of your 4 cost, so you lost a card, you don't get to attack with a 4 cost next turn, and I have my own that I've developed that I didn't even have to lose a card in hand with. So that's kind of like the back and forth. But if you're able to play like a Zoro, attack with it, your opponent's like, well, all right, well, they already got the value from that card, so it's not as good, and they're pressuring me, and that's kind of rough. So that's kind of what I've seen. I'm sure you guys have your own text for it, but those are kind of the ways that I've seen for it. But in general, I think Sakazuki doesn't really, like, it can win most matchups, I think, in this format. There's not a lot, and on the flip side, most decks, they have to be like, okay, can this deck beat Sakazuki right now? I think that's the question a lot of people are saying. Or someone says, oh, look at my new Spice deck. The immediate question afterwards is, cool, what's the Sakazuki matchup look like, right? So that's kind of where we're at in this meta. But we're just kind of at the final thoughts. I know this is kind of rambly, and we did the TL, didn't watch, but I think that this deck is going to be best deck in format. I think it's going to be very strong. I don't know if it's going to be tier 0, to be honest. If I was to have to say something, I would probably say yes. I would say yes, it would, if I had to choose between the two. But it's not something that I think that it's going to be around long enough. Right now, we won't have enough tournaments and enough data for me to really campaign on that. If anything needs to really change, but I did just want to make an opinion to see where my head's at. I know a lot of you guys kind of want to know what my thoughts are on that kind of stuff, but I also implore you guys to have your own thoughts and everything from there. But we'll see. Honestly, we'll see. I'm optimistic that this is a fresh meta, which is really cool. I still am having flashbacks to the November meta, which I thought was really fun. So being able to have such diversity over last couple weeks and all these different formats back to back has been keeping it fresh. So if Sakazuki ends up being the best one, that's what we find out. But until then, I'm looking forward to seeing what we got. But that's going to be it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to check out my live streams if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all next time.